I'm a leaner, 31 female. I live in a city that never seems to sleep, in a small but meticulously organized apartment that serves as my sanctuary from the controlled chaos of my job. As a financial analyst, my days are governed by numbers, patterns, and the relentless logic of the market. It's a life built on precision and predictability, a world I constructed for myself brick by brick. For most of my life, however, I felt like a variable in someone else's equation, a number that was always being rounded down to make room for a more important calculation. That all changed on my 30th birthday, the day I was supposed to have a surprise party but ended up eating a cold dinner alone, while my family secretly celebrated my brother. A year later, they came to me with bright smiles, asking me to plan the very wedding that had overshadowed my milestone, and I gave them an answer they would never forget. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The week leading up to my 30th birthday was filled with a simmering, electric anticipation. Turning 30 felt significant, a real, tangible line in the sand between the exploration of my 20s and the establishment of my 30s. I wasn't scared of it. I was ready to welcome it. My family, it seemed, was ready too. My mother, Brenda, had been dropping hints for weeks, her voice laced with a conspiratorial excitement that was usually reserved for my younger brother, Leo. "Oh, Ellie, just you wait," she'd said over the phone, her voice practically buzzing. "We have something very, very special planned for your big day. Just keep Saturday evening free, completely free." My father, Richard, a man of fewer words but equal devotion to my brother, echoed the sentiment with a knowing chuckle. "Your mother's gone all out. You won't know what hit you." Even Leo, who typically only called when he needed something, sent a rare text. "Heard Mom and Dad are cooking something up for your B-Day. Get ready. It's gonna be big." I let myself get swept up in it. For once, the spotlight seemed to be turning in my direction. Growing up, I was the quiet, responsible one. I was the one who got good grades, followed the rules, and never caused any trouble. Leo was the charismatic, spontaneous one. He was the golden child, the sun around which our family's solar system revolved. His victories were household triumphs, his setbacks were family crises. My achievements were met with a pleasant nod, my struggles with a gentle suggestion to work a little harder. I had long ago accepted this dynamic as a fundamental law of our family's physics. But 30 felt different. It felt like an occasion too significant to be overshadowed. I imagined what they could have planned. A surprise party with my few close friends from work, a weekend getaway. My mind spun with possibilities, each one warming me with a sense of long overdue recognition. The final instruction came from my mother on the Friday before. "Okay, darling," she said, her voice a low, excited whisper. "Here's the plan. Tomorrow night, dress up nicely. And I mean nicely, Aliner. Be at the Gilded Lantern at 7:30 p.m. sharp. The reservation is under my name, Brenda. Just give them the name and they'll take you to the private room. We'll all be there waiting for you." The Gilded Lantern. My breath caught in my throat. It was one of the most exclusive, talked-about restaurants in the city, famous for its months-long waiting list and its breathtaking rooftop views. It was the kind of place you saw on lifestyle blogs, a place for major celebrations. This was bigger than I thought. My heart swelled with a genuine, unadulterated happiness. They really did see me. They really were making an effort. That Saturday, I spent the entire afternoon preparing. I had my hair professionally styled. I splurged on a new dress, a simple but elegant navy blue sheath that made me feel powerful and sophisticated. I did my makeup with care, making sure every detail was perfect. As I looked at my reflection before leaving, I saw not just a woman turning 30, but a woman who was finally being celebrated by her family in the way she had always secretly hoped to be. I arrived at the Gilded Lantern at 7:25 p.m., my heart thumping a nervous, happy rhythm against my ribs. The lobby was even more stunning in person, all dark wood, soft gold lighting, and hushed, important-sounding conversations. I walked up to the host stand, a smooth marble monolith presided over by a man in a perfectly tailored suit. "Good evening," I said, my smile feeling wide and bright. "I'm here for the Brenda reservation. It should be for a private room." The host tapped on his tablet, his brow furrowing slightly. "Brenda, you said?" He tapped again. "Ah, yes, the Starling room, it's our best view," he gave me a polite, professional smile. "However, it seems you're the first to arrive. Would you like me to show you to the room, or would you prefer to wait at the bar?" "Oh," I said, slightly surprised. I had expected them to be there already, ready to shout surprise. "I'll go to the room, thank you." He led me through the bustling main dining area to a quiet corridor. At the end was a heavy wooden door. He opened it to reveal a beautiful, intimate space. A single large table was set for 5, with gleaming silverware and sparkling crystal. One entire wall was a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the glittering city skyline. It was perfect. "Can I get you something to drink while you wait?" the host asked. "Just some sparkling water for now, thank you," I replied. He nodded and left, closing the door softly behind him. And so I sat, and I waited. 7:30 p.m. came and went. I sipped my water, my eyes fixed on the door, my ears straining for the sound of their arrival. I pictured their faces, my mother's beaming smile, my father's proud nod. At 7:45 p.m., a knot of anxiety began to tighten in my stomach. They were probably just stuck in traffic. The city was notorious for it on a Saturday night. I pulled out my phone and sent a lighthearted text to our family group chat. "Made it! The room is amazing. Can't wait to see you all." No response. At 8:00 p.m., the knot of anxiety had grown into a heavy stone. The waiter came in to refresh my water. "Are you sure you don't want to order an appetizer, miss?" he asked, his tone gentle, but his eyes held a flicker of pity that made my skin prickle. "No, thank you. They should be here any minute," I said, the words sounding hollow even to my own ears. I tried calling my mother. It went straight to voicemail. I tried my father. Voicemail. I tried Leo. Voicemail. Now panic began to seep in. Had something happened? An accident? My mind raced through a Rolodex of terrible possibilities. I was no longer thinking about a surprise party. I was thinking about emergency rooms and police calls. At 8:30 p.m., I had called each of them 3 more times. Every call was a direct trip to a disembodied, recorded voice. The beautiful view of the city now seemed to mock me, a million tiny lights shining on my solitary humiliation. The empty chairs around the table felt like accusers, silent witnesses to my foolishness. At 8:45 p.m., the host returned, his face a mask of practiced sympathy. "Ma'am," he said softly, "the table is booked for another party at 9:30. Do you want me to have the kitchen prepare something for you from the bar menu, perhaps?" The shame was a physical force, a hot wave that washed over me from my head to my toes. I was the woman who had been stood up, not by a date, but by her entire family, on her 30th birthday, in the fanciest restaurant in town. "No," I managed to say, my voice thick. "Thank you, I think there's been a mistake." I gathered my purse, my hands shaking so badly I could barely clasp it shut. I walked out of the private room, past the sympathetic eyes of the staff, through the lobby filled with laughing, happy people, and out into the cold night air. The beautiful navy blue dress now felt like a costume for a play where I was the only actor who had shown up. I stood on the curb, the city noise a dull roar in my ears, and waited for a cab, my grand, celebratory evening dissolving into the most profound and public loneliness I had ever known. The empty table wasn't just a missed reservation. It was a perfect, damning metaphor for my place in my own family. The cab ride home was a blur of streetlights and silent tears. Each drop that slid down my cheek felt hot with a mixture of confusion, hurt, and a humiliation so deep it was visceral. My mind was a frantic storm, oscillating between terror that something awful had happened to them and a colder, sharper fear that it hadn't, that this was deliberate. When I got back to my apartment, The first thing I saw was the happy birthday banner a friend from work had helped me put up. It seemed like a cruel joke. I tore it down, the ripping sound of the paper a small, unsatisfying echo of the tearing in my chest. I took off the expensive dress and let it fall to the floor in a heap of navy blue disappointment. Dressed in an old t-shirt and sweatpants, I sat on my couch in the dark, my phone clutched in my hand like a useless talisman. Around 10:15 p.m., my phone finally rang. It was my mother. I snatched it up on the first ring, a flood of desperate questions on the tip of my tongue. "Mom, what happened? Are you guys okay?" I was so worried. There was a pause on the other end, and then Brenda's voice came through, strained and overly placating. "Oh, Ellie, honey, I am so sorry about tonight. We feel just terrible." "Sorry, what happened? Was there an accident?" I pressed, my voice rising with residual panic. No, nothing like that. Everyone's fine," she said quickly. "It's just something came up with Leo, something rather important." I waited, the silence stretching. The relief that they were safe was immediately replaced by a chilling premonition. "Something came up with Leo," I repeated, my voice flat. "What does that mean? You couldn't send a text. I called a dozen times. I was sitting in that restaurant for over an hour by myself." I know, and I am just sick about it," she said, her voice dripping with a practiced, theatrical guilt. "My phone died and your father left his in the car. It was all such a whirlwind." The excuses were so flimsy, so transparent, they were insulting. Leo had a really tough day at work. A big presentation didn't go well, and he was just so down, absolutely beside himself. We knew we had to do something to cheer him up, to show him our support. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. "So what? You stood me up on my 30th birthday to cheer Leo up." "Well, when you put it like that, it sounds awful," she said defensively. "It wasn't like that. We took him out for a special dinner, just to talk things through and get his spirits up. It was a last-minute decision. We were on our way to meet you when he called, and he just sounded so broken, Eleanor. As a mother, I had to make a choice." A special dinner. The phrase hung in the air, acidic and sharp. My surprise birthday dinner at the Gilded Lantern was disposable, but Leo's bad day required an immediate, special intervention that apparently involved all three of them going completely incommunicado. "So you, Dad, and Leo all went to dinner somewhere else?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "And you left me sitting alone in a private room you booked for my birthday." "We were going to call the restaurant to cancel, but it all happened so fast," she continued, the lies piling up, each one more clumsy than the last. "Richard was driving, and I was trying to calm Leo down on the phone, and we forgot. By the time we remembered, it was already so late, and we figured you would have gone home." Figured I would have gone home. The casual dismissal of my feelings, of my time, of my milestone birthday was breathtaking. I wasn't a priority. I was an appointment that could be canceled without notice. I thought back to all the years I had rearranged my schedule, left parties early, or changed plans to attend one of Leo's soccer games, or his graduation, or the celebration for his first job. I had always shown up. It had never occurred to me that they wouldn't do the same for me. "I can't believe this," I whispered, the fight draining out of me, replaced by a cold, heavy resignation. "You do realize what day it is, right?" "Of course I do, honey, and we will make it up to you, I promise," she said, her tone shifting to one of bright, false cheer. "We'll do something next weekend, just the four of us. We can go to that little Italian place you like." The offer was so laughably inadequate it was almost absurd. A casual dinner at a neighborhood pasta joint as a replacement for a meticulously planned celebration at one of the city's top restaurants. The message was clear. My celebration was secondary. It was flexible. It was less important than a momentary dip in Leo's mood. "I have to go, Mom," I said, my voice empty. I didn't have the energy to argue, to scream, to explain the depths of the hurt they had just inflicted. They wouldn't understand it anyway. To them, this was a simple logistical hiccup, a rescheduling issue. To me, it was the confirmation of a lifetime of feeling like an afterthought. "Ellie, don't be like that," she started, but I cut her off. I'm tired, good night. I hung up before she could reply. I slid down onto the cold, hardwood floor, my back against the couch. The silence of the apartment pressed in on me. I thought about the empty table, the pitying look from the waiter, the new dress crumpled on the floor. They hadn't just forgotten my birthday. They had actively chosen to discard it in favor of my brother. It wasn't an accident or an emergency. It was a choice. They had weighed my feelings against his, and mine were found wanting. I got up, walked to the kitchen, and opened the refrigerator. I pulled out a container of leftover pasta from 2 nights ago. I didn't bother to heat it up. I stood there, under the harsh glare of the kitchen light, eating cold pasta out of a plastic container with a fork. It was the saddest, most desolate meal of my life. And as I ate, a cold, hard resolve began to form in the pit of my stomach. It was a feeling I hadn't felt before, not anger, not sadness, but a quiet, chilling clarity. They had shown me my exact value in the family hierarchy, and I would never, ever forget it. In the days that followed my disastrous 30th birthday, a strange and unsettling calm descended upon our family communications. My mother sent a flurry of overly cheerful texts about making it up to me. My F. Ather sent a single, awkward message that read, "Sorry about Saturday. Hope we can celebrate soon." Leo, predictably, said nothing at all. I responded to them all with a detached, non-committal politeness. "No worries, I understand. We'll figure something out." I was a placid lake on the surface, but underneath, the currents of hurt and resentment were churning. I knew their version of events was a lie, a hastily constructed facade to cover their blatant favoritism. But I had no proof, only the gut-wrenching intuition that their story about Leo's bad day was far from the whole truth. Their excuses were too flimsy, their lack of communication too convenient. I let them believe I had accepted it. I played the part of the understanding, ever-forgiving daughter and sister. It was a role I had practiced for a lifetime, after all. The truth, when it came, didn't arrive with a dramatic confession or a tearful apology. It came, as truths so often do in the modern world, through the cold, indifferent lens of social media. It was Wednesday evening, 4 days after the incident. I was decompressing after a long day at work, scrolling idly through my Instagram feed. It was the usual mix of vacation photos, sponsored posts, and pictures of my friends' pets. And then I saw it. The photo was posted by a man named Alex, one of Leo's closest friends from college, a guy I'd met a handful of times at family gatherings. The picture was bright, loud, and professionally taken. It was a group shot. In the center, beaming, stood my brother Leo and his longtime girlfriend, Chloe. Chloe was holding up her left hand, showcasing a massive, glittering diamond ring. Flanking them with equally wide, celebratory smiles were my parents, Brenda and Richard. They were all raising champagne flutes in a toast. My blood ran cold. I looked closer, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. The background was unmistakable. The dark wood paneling, the distinctive gold light fixtures, the unique pattern on the upholstery of the chairs. It was the Gilded Lantern. There was absolutely no doubt about it. Then my eyes fell to the caption Alex had written beneath the photo. "An amazing night celebrating these two. Can't believe my best mate is finally tying the knot. So happy for you, Leo and Chloe. Welcome to the family, Chloe. Chesedai's engagement celebration, the Gilded Lantern." And then the final damning piece of evidence, the date stamp. Posted, Saturday. I stared at the screen, my mind struggling to process the information. Every beat of my heart was a hammer blow, knocking the breath from my lungs. The flimsy narrative my mother had fed me shattered into a million pieces. There was no bad day at work. There was no last-minute crisis. There was no need to cheer Leo up. It was a planned engagement party for Leo and Chloe at the Gilded Lantern on my 30th birthday. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. They hadn't canceled my birthday dinner for Leo. They had booked his engagement party on my birthday. The reservation I was sent to wasn't even for me. It was likely a decoy, or perhaps they had booked 2 rooms, hoping I'd just sit quietly in one while the real celebration happened in another. Or maybe, And this thought was the most painful of all. They simply hadn't thought about me at all. They had a scheduling conflict. The only date the restaurant was available for their precious son's big moment clashed with their daughter's milestone birthday, and they made their choice. They chose him. They lied to my face, concocting a pathetic story to cover their tracks, confident that good old, reliable Ellie would just accept it and move on. I zoomed in on the photo, my analyst's brain kicking into overdrive, pushing past the tidal wave of emotion. I examined their faces. My mother, Brenda, looked ecstatic, her arm wrapped proudly around Chloe. My father, Richard, stood slightly behind Leo, his hand on his son's shoulder, a look of pure paternal pride on his face. And Leo looked triumphant. There wasn't a hint of a bad day on his smug, smiling face. They were all dressed to the nines, my father in a suit, my mother in a shimmery cocktail dress, Leo in a crisp blazer. This was no last-minute affair. This was a planned, expensive, landmark event. A wave of nausea washed over me. I thought of myself, sitting alone in that silent room, dressed in my special dress, my stomach twisted with worry for them. I thought of the pity in the waiter's eyes. I thought of me, eating cold leftovers in my dark kitchen, accepting my mother's pathetic lies because, on some level, I still wanted to believe they cared. The carelessness of it was what struck me the deepest. They had constructed this elaborate lie, yet they hadn't considered the most basic element of modern life, social media. They hadn't told Leo's friends to keep it quiet. They were so confident in my passivity, so certain of their ability to nudge me that they didn't even bother to cover their tracks properly. Or perhaps they just didn't care if I found out. I took a screenshot of the photo. Then I took another. I saved it to a secure folder on my phone, labeling it simply evidence. The hurt that had defined the past few days began to cool, crystallizing into something else. It was an anger so pure and so cold it felt like ice forming in my veins. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a calculated deception. It was a profound statement about my worth in their eyes. I sat there in the dark for a long time, the screen of my phone illuminating my face. The single, careless photo had given me the one thing they never intended for me to have, the truth, and with the truth came a new, unsettling sense of power. They thought I was the quiet, compliant variable in their family equation. They had no idea that I was about to solve for X. The discovery of the photograph was a catalyst. The hurt, which had been a raw, open wound, began to scar over, replaced by a cold, methodical resolve. My training as a financial analyst took over. I dealt in data, in verifiable facts, in uncovering the truth hidden beneath layers of misleading information. I was going to apply that same skill set to my own family. I wasn't going to have an emotional outburst. I wasn't going to confront them with tears and accusations. That's what they would expect. That's what they could manage, dismiss, and spin. No, I was going to launch a quiet, private investigation. I needed to understand the full scope of the deception before I could even begin to think about what to do with it. My first step was to create a new, password-protected spreadsheet on my personal laptop. I titled it Project Nightingale, a nod to Florence Nightingale, but also because a nightingale sings in the dark. The columns were simple: date, event, participants, evidence, notes. The first entry was for the night of my birthday, detailing my experience, my mother's phone call, her exact lies, and the screenshot of Alex's Instagram post as the primary piece of evidence. I started digging. I went through the social media profiles of everyone I knew who was connected to Leo and Chloe. Most profiles were private, but people are often careless with their friends lists. I found Chloe's public Pinterest account. It was a treasure trove. She had a secret board titled Our Big Day that she had clearly forgotten to keep private. The date it was created? 6 weeks before my birthday. The board was filled with pins for engagement party ideas, floral arrangements, and most damningly, pictures of the Gilded Lantern's private rooms. There were comments exchanged between her and her friends. One, from 3 weeks before the party, read, "Got the reservation. It was so hard to get, but we snagged a cancellation for the 12th. It's a Saturday, so everyone can make it." The 12th, my birthday. They hadn't just stumbled upon the date, They had actively sought it out and celebrated it as a victory. I screenshotted the entire board and saved it to my evidence folder. My next move was more delicate. I needed a human source, someone inside the family circle but not in the inner sanctum. My target was my mother's cousin, Sharon. Sharon was a notorious gossip, a woman who collected family information like some people collect stamps. She meant no harm, but she couldn't keep a secret if her life depended on it. I knew that if I played my cards right, she would tell me everything. I called her the following weekend under the guise of just catching up. I let her talk for 20 minutes about her garden, her new car, and her daughter's latest drama at school. Then, I casually steered the conversation. "Oh," I said, injecting a note of breezy curiosity into my voice. "Speaking of exciting news, I heard a little rumor that Leo and Chloe might have gotten engaged. Is that true?" Sharon took the bait immediately. "Oh, honey, you didn't know?" she said, her voice dropping conspiratorially. Brenda swore everyone to secrecy. She wanted it to be a big surprise announcement later. But yes, he proposed a few weeks ago, and they had the most gorgeous party last Saturday at that fancy place, the Gilded Lantern. "Wow, last Saturday?" I said, feigning surprise. "That was my birthday. I guess they were trying to do a double celebration." Sharon let out a little laugh. "Oh no, honey, I don't think so. Brenda was in a real tizzy about that. I talked to her the week before. Apparently the only day they could get the restaurant for the party was on your birthday. She was complaining about the unfortunate timing. She said she was worried you'd be a little sensitive about it, but that you were so practical, she was sure you'd understand that some things, like a perfect engagement party for her only son, just had to take precedence." Precedence, the word hit me like a physical blow. She had actually said that. It wasn't a mistake or an oversight, it was a conscious, deliberate hierarchy of importance. "She said she was going to arrange a nice, quiet dinner for you on another night to make up for it," Sharon continued, oblivious to the emotional devastation she was delivering. "Did she do that? She was hoping you wouldn't connect the dots about their dinner and your canceled one." "Oh yes," I said, my voice miraculously steady. "She mentioned something about that, so the whole family knew about the engagement party." "Oh, absolutely. Richard was so proud, he was telling everyone at the golf club. They had a jeweler friend of a friend get a discount on that ring for Leo. It's been in the works for months," Sharon prattled on. "They wanted it to be perfect. A real fairy tale start for them." A fairy tale start for them, built on a foundation of lies to me. I thanked Sharon for the call, promising to talk again soon, and hung up, my hand trembling. I sat in silence, her words echoing in my ears. Unfortunate timing. Worried you'd be sensitive. Practical Ellie will understand. Precedence. They had discussed it. They had weighed the options. They had actively decided to lie to me, not to protect me, but to manage me. They didn't want to deal with my sensitivity. It was easier to deceive me, leave me waiting in a restaurant, and then feed me a story they assumed my practical nature would swallow whole. I opened my laptop and updated the Project Nightingale spreadsheet. I added the Pinterest board evidence. I documented the entire conversation with Sharon, quoting her verbatim. The timeline was now crystal clear. The proposal happened nearly 2 months ago. The ring was purchased. The party was planned for weeks. The date conflict was identified and discussed. The decision was made to prioritize the party and deceive me. The investigation was complete. I had all the facts, all the data points. I had a complete, undeniable picture of the betrayal. The quiet fury that had been simmering inside me now burned with a steady, white-hot flame. They hadn't just forgotten me. They had erased me from my own milestone to better celebrate my brothers. They had treated me with a level of disrespect and deceit that you wouldn't show to a stranger, let alone your own daughter. I closed the laptop. The question was no longer what happened. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I knew one thing for sure. Practical Ellie was done understanding. She was done being managed. They wanted a fairy tale for Leo. They had no idea about the cautionary tale they were writing for themselves. A year is a long time. It's long enough for seasons to change, for wounds to scar over, and for resentment to cure, hardening from a fiery rage into something much stronger and more durable. Resolve. For the 365 days that followed my 30th birthday, I cultivated a new relationship with my family, one built on a foundation of polite, impenetrable distance. I attended family functions, holidays, the occasional Sunday dinner, with a serene, pleasant smile fixed on my face. I listened to their stories, asked appropriate questions, and revealed nothing of my own inner life. My emotional drawbridge was up, the moat around my heart wide and deep. They seemed not to notice, or perhaps they were relieved. My lack of sensitivity confirmed their narrative that I was the practical, understanding daughter. They had gotten away with it. The incident of my 30th birthday was never mentioned again, a forgotten footnote in the grand, ongoing story of Leo's wonderful life. Just as Sharon had predicted, Leo and Chloe made their surprise engagement official a few months later, to a chorus of feigned shock and delight from the family members who had been at their secret party. And then, almost exactly a year after my humiliation, the moment I had been waiting for arrived. It came during a Sunday dinner at my parents' house. After the plates were cleared, Brenda turned to me, her face glowing with an almost manic excitement. Chloe sat beside her, looking equally thrilled. "Ellie, darling," my mother began, reaching across the table to pat my hand. "Now that we have a date set for the wedding, next September, we have a huge, huge favor to ask you." I took a slow sip of water, my expression neutral. "Oh." "Well," Chloe chimed in, her voice sweet as saccharin. "We were thinking, since you're so incredibly organized and so amazing with numbers and spreadsheets." Brenda cut in, unable to contain herself. "We want you to be our wedding planner, unofficially, of course. We just can't afford a professional one, not with the venue we want. But you would be even better. You could help us manage the budget, keep track of the vendors, handle the contracts. You would be an absolute lifesaver. Will you do it? Will you help us give Leo and Chloe the perfect day?" I looked at their hopeful, expectant faces. My mother, so desperate to orchestrate her son's perfect life. Chloe, future golden daughter-in-law, eager to have a fairy tale wedding without the fairy tale price tag. My father and Leo were watching from the living room, nodding in agreement. It was the perfect setup. They weren't just asking for help, they were handing me the keys to the entire kingdom. A slow smile spread across my face. It was the first genuine smile I had shown them in a year. "Of course," I said, my voice warm and sincere, "I would be honored to help." The relief in the room was palpable. My mother clapped her hands together. Chloe squealed and ran around the table to give me a hug that felt like being embraced by a cloud of expensive perfume. "Oh, Ellie, thank you," Brenda gushed. "I knew we could count on you. You've always been the responsible one." "It's my pleasure," I said, meeting my mother's gaze. "I'll do everything I can to make sure their day is unforgettable." And so, Project Nightingale entered its second phase. I became the most dedicated, efficient, and enthusiastic wedding planner imaginable. The first thing I created was the binder. It wasn't just any binder. It was a masterpiece of organizational art. A thick, white 5-inch Deering binder with a custom-printed cover that read, "The Wedding of Leo and Chloe." Inside, I created 15 color-coded tabs: budget, guest list, venue, caterer, florist, photographer, band, attire, invitations, contracts, payment schedule, and more. Each section contained detailed spreadsheets, comparison charts, and contact logs. I threw myself into the work. I spent my evenings and weekends researching vendors, negotiating prices, and scheduling appointments. I handled every email, every phone call. At first, Brenda and Chloe wanted to be copied on everything. I subtly, expertly phased that out. "It's just so much easier if I'm the sole point of contact," I explained to them during one of our weekly planning meetings. "It avoids confusion. You two focus on the fun stuff, like cake tasting and dress shopping. I'll handle the boring logistics. Just trust me." And they did. They trusted me implicitly. I was practical Ellie, the responsible one. I built a fortress of competence around myself, and they were more than happy to live inside it, relieved of all the stress and tedious work. My spreadsheet skills were legendary. The budget tracker was a work of art, with pivot tables and conditional formatting that tracked every single penny of my parents' money they had allocated for the wedding. I negotiated hard, getting them deals that made my father beam with pride. "See, Brenda, that's my girl, got a good head for business." I attended vendor meetings with Chloe and my mother, clipboard in hand. I asked all the right questions. I was their advocate, their champion. With the caterer, I clarified dietary restrictions. With the florist, I debated the merits of peonies versus garden roses. With the photographer, I made a list of must-have shots. To all of them, I introduced myself the same way. "Hi, I'm a leaner. I'm the sister of the groom and the primary planner for this event. All communications, confirmations, and scheduling should come directly through me, please. Here is my contact information." I became the central nervous system of the entire wedding. Every piece of information, every contract, every deposit confirmation, every final payment due date was routed through my email and meticulously filed in its correct place within the binder. The original copies of every signed contract went into a special, zippered pouch at the front of the binder. I made no digital copies for them. The binder was the one and only master source of truth. For 10 months, I played my part to perfection. I absorbed their stress, I solved their problems, I managed their expectations. I listened to Chloe's anxieties about the seating chart and Brenda's endless dithering over the color of the napkins. I was patient, I was kind, I was indispensable. As the wedding day drew closer, their praise became more and more effusive. "Ellie, I don't know how we would have done this without you," Chloe would say, her eyes wide with gratitude. "You've been a rock, an absolute saint," my mother would add, patting my arm. "When this is all over, we'll have a special dinner to thank you, just for you." The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. The week of the wedding arrived. The out-of-town guests were flying in. The final preparations were underway. I did one last round of calls to every single vendor, the venue, the caterer, the band, the florist, the photographer, the officiant, to confirm the arrival times and final details. Everything was perfect. The stage was set. The binder, now swollen to its full 5-inch capacity, sat on my desk like a ticking time bomb. The day before the wedding was a flurry of manufactured chaos. My parents' house was the central hub for arriving relatives. My mother was flitting about, a ball of nervous energy, while Chloe was Edding a final dress fitting. They called me 3 times before noon, each call a frantic query about some minor detail. "Ellie, did you confirm the bus schedule for the hotel guests?" my mother asked breathlessly. "Yes, Mom, it's confirmed. Tab 11 in the binder," I replied calmly. "Ellie, does the caterer know about Aunt Carol's gluten allergy?" Chloe texted. "Yes, Chloe, it was the first thing I confirmed with them months ago. It's noted in the catering contract. Tab 4, I texted back. Each question was a fresh log on the fire of my resolve. They were completely, utterly dependent on me, and even more so, on the system I had created. They didn't know a single vendor's direct phone number or the specific details of a single contract. All they knew was that Ellie handled it, and it's in the binder. That afternoon, I told them I had one last, big errand to run to ensure everything was perfect for the next day. "I'm going to do a final drop-off at the venue, just to make sure the place cards and guest book are set up exactly how you want them," I lied. They showered me with thanks and told me again I was a lifesaver. I went home. On my desk sat the binder, a pristine white monolith containing the DNA of a $100,000 wedding. Beside it was a sturdy, prepaid, express shipping box, and next to that was a small, elegant gift box. With methodical precision, I placed the binder inside the shipping box. I sealed it with heavy-duty tape, pressing down on the edges to make sure it was secure. I had already printed the shipping label. The destination was not the wedding venue. It was a P.O. box I had rented under a pseudonym 6 months ago in a city 5 states away. Then, I turned my attention to the small gift box. Inside, I placed a single, laminated card. On one side of the card, I had printed a high-quality, glossy copy of the photograph from Alex's Instagram feed, the one of my family celebrating Leo and Chloe's engagement at the Gilded Lantern on my 30th birthday. Their smiling faces, their champagne flutes, Chloe's ring, it was all there in vivid, damning color. On the other side of the card, I took out a black, fine-tipped permanent marker. My hand was perfectly steady as I wrote the words I had been composing in my head for a year. Not my circus, not my monkeys. You have your special celebration. Enjoy it. P.S. The final vendor payments are due tomorrow morning. You should probably call them. Not my table. I placed the laminated card in the box, nestled it in tissue paper, and tied the box with a simple white ribbon. My first stop was the Courier Service. I walked up to the counter and handed over the large, heavy box containing the binder. I paid for overnight, priority shipping with tracking. It absolutely has to be there by tomorrow, I told the clerk. He assured me it would be. As I walked out, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying for a year. My second stop was a local messenger service I had booked a week in advance. I gave them the small, elegant gift box. This needs to be delivered to this address, I said, giving them my parents' house. Please deliver it this evening, between 7:00 and 7:30 p.m. I knew they would all be gathered there for the informal rehearsal dinner. The timing was perfect. With my tasks complete, I drove home. I didn't pack a suitcase. I had already done that the week before. 2 large bags were waiting by the door. I changed my clothes, took one last look around my sanctuary of an apartment, and walked out without a backward glance. My final destination was the airport. My confrontation wasn't going to be a screaming match. It wasn't going to be a tearful scene. My confrontation was my absence. It was the silence where my support used to be. It was the chaos that would bloom in the vacuum I had created. As I sat in the airport lounge, waiting for my flight to board, I imagined the scene. The messenger arriving at the door with the beautifully wrapped box. My mother, probably assuming it was a wedding gift, opening it with excitement. The confusion as she pulled out the single, laminated card. The dawning horror as she saw the photograph. The flip of the card. The reading of my note. I imagined the frantic, disbelieving phone calls to me, each one going straight to my voicemail because my phone was now turned off, tucked at the bottom of my carry-on bag. I imagined the panic setting in as they realized the binder, their wedding Bible, the brain of the entire operation, was gone. I imagined them scrambling, trying to remember the name of the caterer, the photographer, the band. I imagined the dawning realization of the second part of my note. The final payments were due. Without the contracts, they wouldn't even know the exact amounts. Without my relationship with the vendors, they were just frantic, anonymous clients on the hook for tens of thousands of dollars. My flight was called. I stood up, walked down the jet bridge, and found my window seat. As the plane ascended, leaving the glittering lights of the city behind, I didn't feel anger or guilt. I felt a profound sense of peace. I had served them their just desserts, and it was a dish best served cold. My destination was an island where the water was the color of turquoise and the sand was the color of sugar. I had booked the trip months ago, a non-refundable, first-class ticket and a suite at a boutique hotel overlooking the ocean. This wasn't just an escape, it was a reward. It was the celebration I had promised myself, the one I truly deserved. For 3 days, my phone remained off. I swam in the warm sea, read books in a hammock, and drank cocktails with tiny umbrellas in them. I went on long walks along the beach and felt the year of coiled tension slowly unwind from my spine. I didn't allow myself to wonder about the chaos I had unleashed back home. My part in that story was over. The note was my final line of dialogue. The rest was their scene to play out. On the 4th day, which would have been the day after the wedding, I finally decided to turn my phone on. I was sitting on my hotel balcony, a cup of coffee in hand, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and orange. I connected to the hotel Wi-Fi and braced myself. The notifications came in a flood, a digital tsunami that made my phone buzz and vibrate nonstop for nearly 2 full minutes. 117 missed calls. 48 from Mom 39, from Dad 21, from Leo 9, from Chloe. 234 text messages. 41 voicemails. I opened the text messages first, my curiosity getting the better of me. I didn't read them all, but I scrolled through the previews, which told the entire story of their descent into panic. The first texts were from my mother, starting around 7:45 p.m. on the night I left. Mom, Ellie, call me right now. This isn't funny. Mom, Eleanor, I swear, if you don't answer this phone, what have you done? Mom, where is the binder? The caterer is calling about the final payment. Then came the text from Leo, escalating from confusion to pure rage. Leo, yo, where are you? Mom is freaking out. Leo, Ellie, this is insane. You are ruining my wedding. Call me back. Leo, I cannot believe you would do something so sick and twisted. You've destroyed everything. My father's were more direct, laced with threats. Dad, you have 1 hour to call me and fix this. Dad, we are calling the police. This is theft. Dad, you are no longer my daughter. Chloe's were a string of crying emojis and pleading messages that quickly turned venomous. CHLOE, Ellie, please. Whatever is wrong, we can fix it. Just bring the binder back. CHLOE, you are the most evil, jealous person I have ever met. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I didn't need to. The texts provided a clear enough picture. They had likely spent the entire night and the wedding day in a frantic, humiliating scramble. They would have had to beg for information, likely paying exorbitant last-minute fees to appease confused and angry vendors. The wedding probably went ahead in some form. A limping, chaotic, incredibly expensive version of the perfect day they had planned. The joy and celebration would have been completely eclipsed by the stress and shame of the mess they were in. With a strange sense of detachment, I selected all the messages. I selected all the voicemails. I selected their contacts from my phone, and I pressed delete. I blocked their numbers one by one. It was a digital cleansing, a final severing of the ties that had bound me for so long. I spent the rest of my vacation in blissful peace. I thought about the laminated card, not my table. It had become my mantra. My family's table was a place where I was expected to sit quietly, to accept the scraps of attention they threw my way, and to be grateful for even that. It was a table where my accomplishments were minimized and my brothers were magnified, where my feelings were an inconvenience and my support was an expectation. I had not just walked away from that table, I had flipped it over. And now, I was building a new one. My new table was here, on this balcony overlooking the ocean. It was in my apartment back home, a place of peace and order that I had created. It was with my small circle of loyal friends who celebrated my birthday with a simple, heartfelt dinner the week after the disaster, the kind of celebration that filled you with warmth, not shame. When I returned home, I felt like a different person, lighter, freer. There was no letter from a lawyer, no police at my door. They knew they had no legal ground to stand on. I hadn't stolen their money, I had meticulously managed it. I hadn't broken any contracts. I had simply withdrawn my unpaid, unappreciated labor and returned all property, the binder, to myself. The most they could accuse me of was being a cruel, vindictive sister. And after the way they had treated me, I was more than willing to wear that title in tea. Air story. I never spoke to them again. Through the family grapevine, I heard that the wedding had been a categorical disaster, and that my parents had to take out a second mortgage on their house to cover the last-minute costs and vendor penalties. Leo and Chloe were apparently still married, but the start to their fairy tale had been a nightmare from which they never fully recovered. Sometimes, I wonder if they ever understood why I did it. If they ever connected their casual, cruel act of erasure on my 30th birthday to the cold, calculated revenge that followed. I doubt it. People like them rarely see their own reflection clearly.